Okie doke. See if we can get started, guys. Okay, hi everyone. Yeah, so welcome back to another Ask Me Anything. This is kind of a bit of a milestone for today, because what we're going to be doing here is our last class on chromatic chords, probably for a while, until somebody asks another question about it anyway. But this is probably the most long-winded, roundabout way of answering a question that goes back maybe a month and a half, 2 months now. And it was, what do we mean by chromatic harmony? Okay, so that's what today's question is going to be finishing up on. I hope. I'll probably have to do more, but this is the main stuff anyway. Like as usual, I'm just going to check my audio levels, guys, just to make sure that it actually is coming through. Let me check. Okay, so that's what today's question is going to be finishing up on. I hope. Okay, yeah, it actually is coming through, but it's a bit weird sounding. Okay, maybe that's just my voice today. Okay. So, diminished seventh chords. That's what we're looking at today. It's probably one of the, if not the most important chromatic chords that we have. The reason being is that they occur equally sort of in minor keys and major keys. They're used for decorating harmony as well, like for secondary function chords. We've already looked at that with secondary dominants, and some of the secondary leading note chords can be diminished seventh chords. It's used a lot to create tension in music and drama in music, suspense, like a sense of thrill in the music. They're used a lot for distant modulation to other keys. There's a very sort of flexible in that you can invert them as well and get different types of chords out of them, different types of diminished seventh chords. So they're very versatile. They have many uses. You can use them to decorate harmony. You can use them to modulate to distant keys, and they bring a heck of a lot of extra drama and suspense to music in general. So yeah, that's why they're probably the most important type of chromatic chord that exists. Okay, so let's have a look to see if we can go into it in a wee bit more detail. I'm just going to share my screen as usual, so you guys hopefully can see that as well. Just move some stuff out of the way and bring some stuff up. Okay, this is today's handout. Really, this is it. It's one sort of page, and we really are going to get into this. Okay. And I'm also going to need my piano to sort of help out with doing a lot of the heavy lifting. Here is the Classer Maestro app. Make sure that it's on. And make sure that's actually coming out as well. You guys should be able to actually hear this. Heavy lifting. Here is the Classer Maestro app. Make sure that it's on. Oh, it is. Okay, I just need to make sure, because there's going to be a lot of stuff we're going to be doing. Okay, what do we mean by a diminished seventh chord? We can actually minimize this just so we don't get distracted and just focus totally on the piano. A diminished seventh chord, guys, is a chord. You can think of it in two ways. The first way is the easiest. It's a chord that's made up entirely of minor thirds stacked on top of each other. So let's do one in the key of C major. So C is our tonic, and if we go up 7, it didn't need to go up 7, could have just gone down 1. We land on B. Let's make that into a chord. That's the leading note chord so far. And you can actually see there, if we just freeze that, that's already a diminished chord. It's a diminished triad because we're creating the chord from stacks of thirds. Okay, so that's a diminished chord, or more specifically, it's a diminished triad. That's going to be one of the most obvious places then to get your diminished seventh chord, because we've already got the minor third that we need. Between the B and the D, we've got another minor third. Between the D and the F, and all we need is one more on top of that F, a minor third up from that F, and we'll have a fully diminished seventh chord. So if we add F, A. That's not a minor third. That's a major third. If you're a little bit unsure of the difference between major and minor thirds, check out the video we did on intervals. Maybe going back like a month or two now. But it was definitely after Christmas anyway, I think. So it's like January, February, March maybe. So around about that time we did a whole class on intervals and the difference between major and minor intervals. So this major third is not what we need. We need a minor third, so we need to lower that A down to an A flat. There we go. That's your fully diminished 7th chord. And it really wants to go to that chord 1. So the leading note wants to lead up, and the flat wants to fall down, and the 2 inner ones, want to go into that E, the 3rd of the next chord. You can probably feel the tension just from that one chord, and it needs to resolve. If you don't resolve it, then you've kind of in the realm of 20th century, some sort of avant-garde 20th century style of music. But most classical music will tend to resolve diminished 7th chords quite quickly, because there's so much tension in them. So that's the first thing. I'm just going to grab a wee bit of water. Okay, so that's the first thing about diminished 7th chords. You can think of them as stacks of minor thirds. So you can start anywhere and just go up minor thirds. That's the nice thing about diminished 7th chords. You can create them anywhere. Just keep using minor thirds. There's another one. Minor third, E flat to G flat, G flat to B double flat. Or there's loads. So as long as you stack them up in minor thirds, you can create loads and loads of different types of diminished 7th chords. And they're very versatile that way because there's so many you can create. Even if you invert them, you end up creating a new one. You can think of that as D, F, A flat, C flat, even though it looks like a B, C flat, B, D, F, A flat, B, D, F, A flat, C flat, E double flat. So just call them different names and you end up with a different diminished 7th chord, but it'll still sound like similar to the other ones. But that's just all based off the same 4 notes. And they all, though that one wants to go there. The other way of thinking of them is not just as stacks of minor thirds, but the actual intervals inside them, between every note and the bass. So let's have a look. Okay. Let's make sure my head isn't in the way of this. I'm just going to have to move my piano down maybe there. There we go. Just keeping a wee eye out where my piano's going. There we go. I'm going to move this up a little. Yeah, that looks okay. Okay. This is the more traditional way, the more scientific way of looking at diminished 7th chords. I'm not just thinking of stacks, of minor thirds anymore. Just one minor third on top of each other. B to D, D to F, F to A flat. We're now thinking of them all in relation to the root, to the lowest note. So B to D, as we know, is a minor third. B to F is a diminished fifth. Okay, so that's really important to get that. B to F is a diminished fifth. That's what gives the diminished chord to start with, that you do need a diminished fifth. The last thing you need as well is the B to the A flat. That must be a diminished seventh. Okay, so you have two diminished intervals. B to F is a diminished fifth, and B to A flat is a diminished seventh. Two diminished intervals. You need them both if you're going to call it a diminished seventh chord. Okay, so this is what makes these chords chromatic, is that if you're in a major key, as we are here in this example in C major, and you want a fully diminished seventh chord, you're going to have to introduce an accidental, in this case an A flat. But if you're in any other chord as well, any other diminished seventh chord, you're going to need accidentals as well. This is probably the easiest one. It's the most logical place that you're going to see diminished seventh chords in a major key, in chord 7. You know, the seventh chord with a seventh. This is where it gets a bit confusing sometimes when you're thinking of leading note chords, seventh chords, and you're adding a seventh to them. You know, so I'm going to try to avoid calling them seventh chords. I always try to call them leading note chords, because it gets confusing if you say a seventh chord with a seventh. You know, so I'm going to call it the leading note chord with a seventh. Okay, so that's the Roman numeral there, VII. And the wee circle is enough to get us the B, D, and F. And if we add the A flat on top, it has to be an A flat. Then you can add the little 7 in as well. So this is the way that it's analyzed. Leading note seventh chord in the key of C major. So chord 7 is already a diminished triad, so just all you need to do is add another minor third, or the diminished seventh of that chord, B to A flat. Just add that to that chord that is already a diminished triad, and you've got your fully diminished seventh chord. So that is the most logical place you'll see them in major keys anyway. But they can be anywhere. Okay, so that is the most obvious place to have it though, the most popular place. In minor keys, it's chord 2 and chord 7, because you guys, if you've looked at my handouts before, will know that when we're dealing with harmony in a minor key, chord 2 is already a diminished triad. So let's look at that in the key of C minor. We'll do. Okay, that's our tonic chord, C minor. Your chord 2 is D, F, A flat. That's your normal triad, your normal chord in the key of C minor. So it's already a diminished triad. Just like we saw with chord 7 in major keys, you're kind of halfway there already. You know, all you need to do is add one more note and you've got your fully diminished seventh chord. In this case, the chromatic note we're going to add here is the C flat. Now, it must be written in the music on the physical page. It must be written as C flat. Don't ever write it as B, because then what you've done is you've thought of it as a B, D, F, A flat chord like this one, and then you're thinking of it as a different type of diminished seventh chord, inverted. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to be thinking of inverted seventh chords like that, or inverted diminished seventh chords. So be sure that if you're ever going to write this stuff out, especially for any of you guys doing grade 7, this is where it really does begin to kick in, grade 7 theory and grade 8 theory. You really need to be careful of the accidentals that you're using. So be sure that you're going to be using C flat here. Don't use it, don't ever write it as a B, because this is what it should look like. D, F, A flat, C flat. If you think of that as B, then really it's a B, D, F, A flat, first inversion. And that's not what you're looking for. You're not looking for that diminished seventh chord. You're looking for a different one. D, F, A flat, C flat. So that's what makes it the chromatic chord as well, is the fact that you're introducing a C flat. Okay, so obviously a C flat doesn't belong in the key of C minor, so it's chromatic chord again. So there's two chromatic chords. Your chord 7 in major keys, if you add a 7th on top of that and you make it a chromatic note, you've created a chromatic chord, a diminished 7th chord, fully diminished 7th chord, and that's where you should normally see it in major keys on chord 7. If you're doing minor keys, you normally will see the chromatic chord on chord 2. Okay, because you're adding the 7th this time, it's going to be, in the key of C minor, it's going to be a C flat that you're adding in on that chord 2. And the reason why it's 2 and 7, as we've already said, is that those chords already are diminished to start with. You're halfway there. You only need to add the diminished 7th on top. That's it. And you've got your fully diminished 7th chord. So they're the most obvious places to see them. In minor keys, it will be on chord 2, and in major keys, it will be on chord 7. You just have a little bit of work to do and work out what your diminished 7th is for those chords. Now, the most popular place for all diminished 7th chords is going to be in minor keys and on chord 7. Why is that? Well, in minor keys, as you guys should already know from the previous lesson that we did on chords and harmony, is that in minor keys, you tend to raise the 7th degree of the scale. You're already starting on the B natural, just like we were doing in C major. There. So your chord 7 is starting on that raised 7th. Raised 7th. There's your diminished triad. We'll push it down an octave just to make it easier for me to sing if I need to sing it. I'm not the greatest singer of doing it this way, but just in case I need to sort of demonstrate something. So we'll just push it down an octave. Doesn't make any difference where you play it. Still a diminished chord. B, D, and F. The only difference is in a minor key, you would notate the B as a B natural, because it's been in the key of C minor. You have 3 flats, so you need to indicate that B has been raised. It's the 7th degree of the scale, and that's normal to do that from minor keys. So all we need to do is add the diminished 7th on top, which is the A flat. The A flat already exists from the key signature, as you guys can see here. So it's already there. Unlike the major keys where you had to insert the A flat, in minor keys when you put in a 7th on that diminished triad, that leading note chord, the diminished 7th that you're looking for is already present, already provided by the key signature. So you don't have to add any naturals or flats or any, touch that note at all. The key signature is taking care of it for you, which means that this is the only time ever that when you come across a diminished 7th chord, that it's diatonic, belongs to the key. All the other ones are chromatic chords because they're introducing chromatic notes that don't belong to the key. Obviously in C major, you're not going to have A flats, and in C minor, you're definitely not going to have C flats. So having this B, D, F, A flat provided by the key signature, that makes it diatonic. So a leading note chord with the 7th in minor keys is the only time a diminished 7th chord is diatonic, belongs to the key. So for something chord progression like for any of you classical musicians out there who probably know the piece I was suggesting there, the one that the toccata and fugue. I think it's in. The famous one by Bach. I think it's in D minor. And then the diminished 7th chord is. Okay, so you hear that dramatic. Bum, 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 bum. That's your diminished seventh chord. So if you're looking for an example of the big dramatic tension that you get in classical music with those diminished seventh chords, that da da dum da 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 dum dum, the famous one by Bach, that's the best example I can think of. So I always try to have, like, you know, in my head, like for Neapolitan chords, it's Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, and for this one, it's the Bach Toccata and Fugue. I think it's in D minor. It doesn't really matter what key it's in, to be quite honest, but as long as you can play it and hear it, that's the main thing. So hearing that, that's your fully diminished seventh chord. And the key of D minor, you do have the B flat from the key signature and the raised seventh. So having that, it may look like those two notes don't belong in the key of D minor, but they do. B flat from the key signature and the C sharp is the raised seventh. And they all want to go inwards. So the resolution for diminished seventh chords wants to be inward as well. Okay, so let's recap everything there so far before we start looking at other stuff. Okay, if you want to make a diminished seventh chord, number one easiest way to do it, just stacks of minor thirds. Okay, that's by far the easiest way. It's a quick definition and it's a quick way of making up your own. Just go to the piano or whatever instrument you're playing on, guitar, whatever, and just, you know, minor third from one note up to the next and stack them on top of each other. You will end up repeating the cycle forever. Oh. Once you get to C, E flat, G flat, B double flat, you're back to that next one, which is there, and then you're doing the same thing over and over again. So it's kind of an infinite loop if you want to keep on going and going. On the one note, whatever note you start with, just keep stacking those minor thirds, and eventually you can't really go any further after four. You're back to the same note again. Okay, so that's the first way. The second way, always stack them from the bass note up. Minor third from the third to the root, diminished fifth from the fifth to the root, and a diminished seventh from the seventh to the root. Okay, so make sure that those intervals are there. If you're unsure of how to calculate intervals, check the previous video we did on intervals. So that's the two ways of thinking of them: stacks of minor thirds, or calculate everything from the root upwards. Number two, the next most important thing. In major keys, the most logical place to see them is chord 7, the leading note chord. And in minor keys, the most logical place to see them is chord 2, the supertonic chord. Both of those chords in major and minor keys, the leading note chord is a diminished triad, and in minor keys, the supertonic chord is a diminished triad. You're halfway there already to create fully diminished seventh chords. All you've got to do is add the diminished seventh on top, and you're done. Okay, so that's why they're the most obvious place to see them. If you do that, you end up with chromatic chords, and they are probably more. I wouldn't say it's 50% of the time they're going to be chromatic or diatonic. It's hard to say that you're going to see these more. These guys individually aren't as popular as the diatonic version, but together, you know, they're just as popular. They're used just as frequently as the diatonic version. So you do need to know both. You know, the chromatic versions of these chords, and there's diatonic versions of these chords. So the only place you'll see the diatonic version, though, is in minor keys. It has to be minor keys, and it can only be in chord 7. Okay, so that's the only time that the chord will belong to the key if you're looking to create a diatonic chord. Every other diminished seventh chord that exists in music should be a chromatic chord. I think I'm all right in saying that. If I'm wrong in saying that, do correct me. I'm always learning this stuff myself, but I think I've been teaching that for students for years, so I'm hoping it isn't incorrect. But yeah, if there's any examples that you know that aren't like that, do let me know. Okay, let's take this up so far to the sort of theory side of things on this. Okie doke. Just let me zoom out a wee bit just so I get it all in. There we go. Oh, yeah, just put it back to 350. Okay, doke. Let me see if there's anything else that we've missed there, just to make sure. Before we move on from that slide, it's so important to get all that information. Oh, the last thing, I suppose. Think of the examples that you already know pretty well. If you're not sure of the Bach toccata and fugue, that da da dum da 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 dum dum, you'll easily find it in pop music as well. And especially in things like jazz music, anything that involves like a bit more complex harmony. There will be examples. Just do a little Google search until you find a piece that you're like, oh, I know that piece, and then there'll probably be examples of diminished seventh chords inside them. AI nowadays can find all these things for you. I'm definitely not one of these people who believes that AI can replace the actual music itself, but it's definitely very handy to analyze things. It's getting better to be able to analyze the music that's out there, so you don't have to spend too long looking for what you need. So that's what I would do for memorizing the sound. It's very important that you sort of practice audiation and be able to recall the sound in your mind, okay? Because the main purpose of this chord, aside from just introducing, color and decoration into your harmony, the main purpose of it is to introduce tension and drama and sometimes excitement, as into the music. So compared to the other chords that we've looked at, like your major chord, your minor chord, and even your augmented chord, the diminished seventh chord is probably the most I'd say probably affects the mood the most in a piece. Okay, so you definitely need to know what it sounds like when you come across it, because anyone who's doing GCSE or A level in my other classes, you guys will know that's one of the things they test you on, is your ability to hear these chords in pieces you've never heard before or studied before. So just one time hearing it, can you spot the diminished seventh chord? That's very important for A-level students. So for my GCSE students, you should be practicing that anyway, because you don't have to really explain, what the diminished seventh chord is or how it's made up, but just being able to hear that quality of sound is quite useful. Okay. That brings us neatly into the next thing that I want to do, which is actually show you guys one of the apps that I use to sort of do oral training with some of my students who are sitting like grade 6, grade 7, grade 8 exams especially, or especially if they're doing theory or A-level music. Being able to hear these diminished seventh chords is quite useful. And other types of seventh chords as well, not just the diminished seventh. So there's a wee app, as there always is. If I go to Launchpad and see if I can find it for you guys. Oh, it's the other way. It should be the seventh one. Oh, there it is there. So I'm just going to open that up just to get it ready for later on. Oh, every time I open it up, it defaults to this awful yellowish color. Let me just get it nice and sort of pale. There we go. So we will come across that later. We'll do some little exercises on that just to show you guys all the different types of seventh chords. So just keeping him ready to go. Okay. Fully diminished and half diminished. Yeah, this is the second thing. Once you understand what a fully diminished seventh chord is, you should be able to get a half diminished seventh chord. And the interesting thing I have found is that I don't know if this is just unique to Britain and Ireland, but for our music exams in Ireland and in Britain, like ABRSM or Trinity College or anything like that, they tend not to be too, or even A-level, they tend not to be too worried. Can you hear the difference between a diminished and fully diminished and half diminished? So they tend not to examine you on that, which I find unusual. In ABRSM exams, if you wrote down a diminished seventh chord or half diminished seventh chord, they don't really make the distinction. They are actually slightly different. They have the same purpose, though. Their purpose is to introduce tension and drama into music. Okay, it's like a thrilling scene, or some sort of even like murder scenes, or sort of high drama scenes in a film. They're used quite a lot. You'll see them as well in, like, the like Hitchcock movies and stuff. They were probably overused, in the sort of film noir era in 1940s and 50s Hollywood. So they used diminished seventh chords a lot in their scores. And probably that's where we get the association now, but it's been around for centuries in music to introduce a little bit of drama, these diminished seventh chords. And half diminished seventh chords are the same, but there are slight differences that we should look at. So just to recap, the fully diminished seventh chord, you should see a minor third between B and D, in this example in C minor. A diminished fifth between B and F, yep. And a diminished seventh between your B and your A flat from the key signature. Or the other way is stacks of minor thirds on top of each other. They naturally occur diatonically as chords, leading note chord 7 in minor keys. So the half diminished seventh chord, though, you still have the minor third between B and D. You still have the diminished fifth between B and F. But if you don't introduce the A flat like we did over here to get that chromatic chord, if you don't introduce that A flat and just keep it as an A natural, then the interval between B and A is a minor seventh. Okay, so you don't have a fully diminished seventh chord here. Two of the intervals inside of the chord are minor, and only one of them, the B to the F, is diminished. You can't really call it a minor seventh chord. You definitely can't call it a major chord. Can't call it a major seventh or a dominant seventh. So the only other real sort of way of working this chord out is to say, well, it's kind of a bit diminished, but there's two minor intervals which kind of take away from the diminishment. So the tricky one. And the way that you would analyze that then is like a circle with a line through it. Unlike the leading note seventh chord, which was just an ordinary circle with a 7 next to it, you would need to have a line through your circle. And that indicates that it's not a fully diminished seventh. Okay. Again, those are just as popular as their fully diminished seventh counterparts. The ones over here where you're adding the A flat. Usually when I see that being added in music, the chromatic version or the fully diminished seventh version, it's because the musician wants to modulate into an unrelated key. Usually that's when I see it, that's what happens. And usually when you have the half diminished seventh chord, they're staying in whatever key they're in. In this case, it'd be C major because it's a diatonic chord. B, D, F, and A. So if I just scroll up a little and if I just do this, yeah, there we go. This way you can see the piano as well. So here is your B, D, F, A. That's your half diminished seventh. That's your fully diminished seventh. Okay, same place, so you're going to see them in chord 7 in major keys. So you can either see your diatonic half diminished seventh chord or your chromatic fully diminished seventh chord. And the only difference to them is that one note. So they still want to go to the same place. Okay. So same logic applies to the other occasion. The supertonic seventh chord in minor keys is also the other place where you happen to see half diminished seventh chords. You analyze them the same way, a little circle with a line through it, for the same reason. D to F, it's a minor third. D to A, flat is your diminished fifth, and D to C is a minor seventh. If it had have been C flat, fully diminished. It's only one note difference, but it's important to know that the half diminished seventh is nowhere near the same amount of tension as the fully diminished seventh. So it depends on how far you want to go with it. Do you really want to sort of bring a lot of tension into the music and perhaps even modulate to a distant key, or do you just want to suggest a little bit of tension but stay in the original key? It's up to yourself, really. So that's the difference between them, guys. This will definitely take, especially for any of you grade 6, 7, or 8 students, you advanced theory students of mine, it's going to take you a while. It's not one of these things that you hear it once and it's like, all right, I get it now. It will take a little bit of study. That's why I left it to the end, because these are trickier chords, I think. Fully diminished, half diminished, and also going to be diatonic or chromatic. And of course, the handouts, guys, are available if you're in the course. They're available in the course. You can download them anytime, and all the other ones in the course as well. Okay. So let me see. Is there anything else? Oh, of course. Yeah. We will come back to how to use the seventh chords, secondary seventh chords, in a second. I just want to introduce you guys to the little, app. This is kind of handy, I think, anyway. This app, I only ever go as far as diminished seventh chords when I do this with my students, but it can go all the way to seventh add sharp 9 chords, like, that's what called almost like Jimi Hendrix chords. I don't really go that far in this app. You can do it in every key. I only really do it in C major. If you can get it in C major and just use movable do in your mind, you'll be able to do this in any key. Okay, if you can get it in one key, you should be able to get it in the others. So we're going to play a couple of chords here, and then I want you guys to sort of try and hear along with me the differences between each of these types of seventh chord. What happens when we add a seventh chord to a major chord or a minor chord or a diminished chord to make it half diminished or fully diminished. So there's quite a few different things to do here. A few different seventh chords. We're going to be looking particularly at major sevenths, dominant sevenths, minor sevenths, half diminished seventh, and fully diminished seventh. We're not going to bother with augmented seventh or 7 sus4 or 7 sharp 9. Those are more sort of jazz harmony and a wee bit more advanced. And you don't really see them anywhere near as much as these ones. So we'll just stick to the 5 main ones, I think. Okay, let's have a listen. Let's see if I can get this for you guys. Ear training. If I put this in OBS audio, I should be able to. Yeah, there it is there. Yeah, let's see how loud is that going to be. 100%. That should be okay. Let's hear. Just going to check my audio just to see how loud that's coming through for you guys. Is there? Let me hear. Yeah, let's see how loud is that going to be. 100%. That should be okay. It's definitely. No, it's okay. Let's go check my audio just to see how loud that's coming through for you guys. Sometimes when I do this, it's really, really ridiculously loud when I put these through. So apologies if this gets too loud. Just be careful if you're wearing headphones. Okay, so we heard a I think. That is a dominant seventh. The reason why we call that sound the dominant seventh sound is because usually, not always, especially in blues music, but usually that chord acts as the dominant of the key that you're in. Which in this case, if that's chord 5, the dominant chord. 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So the thing to do is listen out for that's your ordinary chord. And can you hear what that seventh is doing? Do you hear a major chord of a minor seventh? In which case it's a dominant seventh. And it should, in real music, that should want to fall. Da-da. So flats, B flat wants to fall. If you heard I could have danced all night. The Julie Andrews thing. I could have danced all night. I could have danced all night. That's how I remember the sound of it anyway. It doesn't always have to be classical music. So, yeah, Neapolitan chord, it's Beethoven's Midnight Sonata. The diminished seventh chord is Bach. And it's Julie Andrews for this. Or you could do Aha, Take On Me. Take on me. That's the interval. And that's the way it wants to go. Go up. On me. Take on me. Take me on. So there's your ordinary chord, your Julie Andrews or Aha, Take On Me. It wants to go up. That major seventh, that first example that we have here, that wants to go upwards. Okay, so da 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 da. The dominant seventh, da 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 da, wants to fall to a new harmony, usually 5 away from whatever the root is. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So two very different functions for each of those chords. They have two very different purposes and two very different sounds. Let's hear again to see. Ba 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 ba. That's definitely dominant seventh. Yes. I always make sure, but let's go on to another one. Da 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 da. Major seventh. Ba 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 ba. Oh, I think this is going to go back and forth 10 times. Major, dominant seventh, major seventh, dominant seventh, major seventh, dominant seventh. Let's get to the end. Major seventh. Okay, introduce the third one. It might get a bit more interesting. Da 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 da. Still dominant seventh. Still major seventh. Oh, minor seventh. So, unlike the major seventh and the dominant seventh, they both had major chords underneath, or major triads as their foundation. So there's your major triad with the major seventh, major triad with the minor seventh for the dominant seventh chord. So they both are similar in that regard, but when you get to the minor seventh, you should still have that, minor seventh, but also the triad is going to be a minor chord. C, E flat, and G. Used a lot in sort of very easy listening, easy going, like, and sort of funky sort of tunes as well. Okay, so there's a lovely sort of sound to them, and they can be used in any chord as well, really. So I think that's what we have, isn't it? Yeah. Minor seventh. Ba 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 ba, Julie Andrews. Or Aha. Dominant seventh. That one. That can be used in blues music, you know. Here it is again. So all blues music is based off of those dominant sevenths. Quite a lot of them. Okay. So that's the sort of blues sound. When I think of Julie Andrews and blues, and then sort of more like be like a funky sort of sound for that one. Yeah. Yeah, it's a sort of a nice sort of funkiness to those minor seventh chords. Also for the major seventh, instead of Julie Andrews or Aha, Take On Me, you could probably think of, like, you know, maybe like Burt Bacharach, or, you know, that sort of like really sort of early 60s, mid 60s sort of sound where you have that. There it is there. Major 7th. Major 7th. They've got a nice openness to them. They're kind of, you know, nice and easy going. They don't have the same tension. This guy's under. Ba, 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 ba. Yeah, even there. Da, 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 da. Da, bum, da, da, da. So they don't have that tension, they don't have the flats in them that you need to make them dominant 7ths. That's where a lot of the blues music sound comes from. There's a lot of tendency notes in blues music that certain notes want to resolve. All those little da-dum, da-dum. Okay, so blues sort of feel for the dominant 7th, and then for the minor 7th, a lot more sort of a funky, jazzy sort of sound to that one. And I think that's what we have here. Oh, that's dominant 7th, that one. Ba-ba-ba-bum. That's the minor 7th. Ba-ba-ba-bum. Ba-ba-ba-ba. Major 7th. After a while, you just look for that high note. Da. Da. With the minor. Ba ba. Dominant 7th. Do 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 do. So C, E natural, G, B flat. Sometimes it's nice to say them out as well, just to train your ear into hearing C, E, G, B flat. And then try and then without, playing anything, can you do the minor 7th? C, E flat, G, B flat. And can you do the major 7th? C, E, G, B natural. And it really wants to go up. So that's what good sort of training yourself, training your inner ear audition, of training yourself to be able to hear these things. It really does help, especially for actually using them in your own compositions and performing them, but also just for theory, knowing what you're looking at as well. Okay, so what was that one again? Dominant 7th. Minor 7th. Okay, here we go. We're going to be opening up into the diminished ones now. Not yet, though. Oh. Ba, 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 ba. Look at the difference. So we zoom in. We've introduced G flats here. That's the first time. Here's the chord again. Ba, 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 ba. C, E flat, G flat, B flat. So again, look at how we get different sound names and different chord names and different qualities and functions to chords based on how we treat the notes inside of each one. Major 7th, C, E, G, B. Dominant 7th, C, E, G, B flat. Minor 7th, C, E flat, G, B flat. And the half diminished 7th, C, E flat, G flat. That's what gives it its quality, its half diminished quality. For me, that sound, when I hear that sound in music, what happened there actually? Did I lose a bit of audio? Sorry, just 2 seconds, guys. I think I may have lost the audio to something there. Am I giving it too much to do? That sound, when I hear that sound in music, sound of music. Oh, I'll just check. Ba 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 ba. Okay, I'm not sure what happened there, guys. Apologies. There's a wee flash there on my computer. May have just been me zooming in. Okay, so I'll just zoom back out again. So when you are hearing that chord, for me, that's like a little fanfare thing at the end of a piece of music. You know, da, 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 da. It's like 20th Century Fox or something that has that, you know, at the beginning of the movies. Do you remember movies when people used to go? Yeah, that's what I think of when I hear that sound. Or Radiohead. Nearly every Radiohead song I can think of has that sound in it somewhere. But I'm a creep. Also, Pink Floyd. What is that exact chords in Pink Floyd? Remember when you were young? Shine on, you crazy diamond. Do 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 do. I'll find it. That's a diminished seventh chord there. Okay, so the only one I could think of there in Pink Floyd was that chord there. There it is in Shine On You Crazy Diamond. There's another one, and I can't play any of these for copyright reasons, guys. Let me see, I'm just gonna have to activate my mouse, which has gone dead here. There's another one in the key of B flat again. That's maybe what I was thinking of. Jarvis Cocker. Let me see. I can find the. I'm not gonna play it. Okay, so just anyone on YouTube watching, just know I'm not gonna break any laws or anything. I'm just looking to get the name of the tune and then play it for you guys. Badly. So there's no chance. Let me see. Seventh chords. Yeah, what was it that we did before? Yeah, 2 secs, guys. Apologies for the dead air here. Let's see. I don't know if it was in film scores. Maybe it's in pop tunes. I need to learn. Let's have a look. Yeah, Joe Cocker. Bye Bye Blackbird. Ba-dum, ba-dum, dum. Oh, as soon as I get the name. There it is there. Diminished seventh chord. So there's one so far, which we had, which was there. So it's Bye Bye Blackbird. There. Also later on in the piece, I think it does something like... I'm just running through it in my head. Here. There. Half diminished sevenths. What was it? That's it. At the beginning of it, anyway. So on that one piece, definitely worth listening without me butchering it. Go to Spotify or YouTube or Apple Music, or if you've got a recording of it, definitely worth getting the album, lads. Joe Cocker stuff's brilliant. And Bye Bye Blackbird. The chords in that are, you know, every pianist will know and be able to even pick them up by ear. You know, I'm hearing that chord 1. It's in the key of B flat. There's a diminished 7th chord. That's chord 5, second inversion with a C at the bottom. And then later on where it's... There's the half diminished 7th chord, which I completely butchered. So there's pieces like that. Now, I couldn't remember the name of the piece because I'm terrible with names. Anyone who's come to my Tuesday night practice with me for trad music, for Irish trad music, will know that I am useless when it comes to names for tunes. But for that particular one, I can hear the sound at Joe Cocker, Bye Bye Blackbird, which is hard enough for me to say. So definitely worth checking it out, guys. Not going to play it. So from the album with a little help from my friends, Bye Bye Blackbird. Yeah, it's in the key of B flat, and in that one key you have both a half diminished 7th and a fully diminished 7th chord, so very handy. That's why one of the reasons I learned the piece is because I love that piece anyway, but also it's handy to be able to sort of use that in teaching as well, to show the difference between that sort of, actually it was this fully diminished 7th chord. And the other one was, they both go to the same place. So this one was going to an F major chord, and this one, half diminished 7th, is also going to F major chord. So they have the same function. It's just this one doesn't have as much. It's a bit more sort of melancholy. I find the half diminished 7th chord a wee bit more sort of sad, sadder sort of sound. It's like minor chord, even more sad than minor. And the diminished 7th chord, just a lot of tension. It's a bit nice crunchiness to it though. The other thing with that half diminished seventh chord, you'd sometimes hear it. If I just go back to C major, so it's easy to see which notes we're affecting here. And if I make it this chord 4, a minor chord 4, and then add in the D. That's the other way in my mind. I think of the half diminished seventh chord for that chord 2. Okay, the wee fanfare, but it's almost like we got to the end of a piece. So it's like a sad sort of plagal cadence. Yeah, so that's the other feeling that I get from half diminished seventh chords. Since I heard that, I just knew the half diminished seventh. I could have danced. It's the half diminished seventh. Could have danced again. Is it just going to go back and forth? Oh no, minor seventh, dominant seventh. Half diminished. Julie Andrews. Dominant seventh. Okay, is it going to introduce the? Yeah, the diminished seventh is now up for grabs. So what did we hear there? Was it just the major seventh? Da 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 da. Yeah. Dominant seventh. Oh, I don't belong here. Like a Radiohead every time I hear half diminished sevenths. Oh, first fully diminished seventh. Let's hear it again. Yeah. Yeah, it's a bit more, less sadness and more suspense, I think, with the fully diminished seventh chord. That's my way of thinking of it anyway. Correct. Da 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 da, dominant seventh. Back to the diminished seventh. Half diminished seventh. Oh, that minor seventh. I haven't heard that in a while. Half diminished. Julie Andrews. Oh, we've moved into augmented seventh. We don't need to go that far, but yeah, if you wanted to. There we go. It's just getting a wee bit crunchier now, and you don't really use that anywhere as much as the other 5. I would highly recommend for any of you guys who are, you know, serious about, and I say serious, I don't mean like serious as in there's not going to be any fun. Serious as in you really want to sort of improve and understand music theory, and not just, you know, the thing that I find a lot of people do when I release these videos is that there's some dismissivity, if there's such a thing. There's some people who just dismiss it and think you don't really need this to be a musician, and usually I find people who are like that are the ones who don't know how to do it. I would take that opinion of a wee bit more seriousness of people who say that, you know, that have gone through it themselves and have found out I've gone through all the ear training and I know how to do audiation perfectly and I can hear all those different seventh chords, no problem. I just don't really ever need it. There is nobody I've ever known who's gone through all of that and has said it was useless and pointless. Nobody, no professional musician would ever say that. So anytime someone says, do I really need to know this? You know, you don't have to know it to play music. If you're serious about wanting to understand what you're doing and be able to manipulate music and sounds to whatever way you want to do it and understand everything you hear and play it and sight read better and learn things faster, then yeah, you do need to go through it. There isn't a shortcut to this stuff. It's like anything. It's a skill. If it's worth having, it's not going to be easy. So in order to make it easier and to make it more fun, this ear training seventh chords app I think is brilliant. It's only like 99p. caveat. It was 99p when I got it years ago. I don't know what it is now. But we've been doing it all from C major. You can push yourself to like a different key. You know, it doesn't have to be C. Let's just say you wanted to try out those seventh chords, but in a different key. You can go in and change, you know, from C major to say D. And now everything is, you know, from the D major. And see, can you do it in a different key? I could have danced. That's going to be this one. So you see the way there's different accidentals brought in. So yeah, you can go to any key that you like here. And when you achieve I never get to the end. When you achieve everything and you're able to do it perfectly a couple of times, you get a little trophy, a little achievement. If you ever have to re-download the app though, it means you lose all your progress. But for £1, guys, it's one of the few apps I've ever seen which is just easy to use, so useful, and it's very versatile. You can put it into any key, and it has all the seventh chords you'll ever need and more. You do not need really the augmented seventh, the 7sus4, and the 7#9. Those things will come. If you are a serious jazz musician, or if you're learning jazz, you will hit that 7#9 chord naturally in your learning process. You want to sort of leave it until you understand the other ones first. The other ones are a bit more important because they happen a lot more often. Okay, nearly all blues music is made up with the dominant seventh sound with other things added. Okay, so you want to definitely get that first. Okay, so worth checking that out. Definitely worth checking it out if you really want to understand it all. And don't be afraid to change the color when you get into it, because it's always going to revert back to some sort of weird pink. Maybe it's just my one. I'm just going to close it just to see what is it usually. Let's quit and go back in. And there's seventh chords, like a yellowy color or something, or pinkish or something. Yeah, it's yellow. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so little instructions come up every time. Yeah, so definitely get away from that sort of. There we go. I always bring it into sort of a wee bit more of a paler white sort of color there. A bit calmer. Okay, so being able to hear the difference between your major seventh, dominant seventh, minor seventh. We've looked at those three chords before, but now we can add the half diminished seventh and fully diminished seventh to your bank of chords. Those 5 seventh chords are more than enough to get you through most, not all, but through most even university level courses of being able to hear those sevenths. Adding the few little ninths and 11ths and 13ths here and there is not going to be an issue if you can hear those ones first. Okay, so they're really quite useful and quite applicable to most music you've ever learned, or most music you'll ever hear. Okay, is there anything that I've missed? I think that's everything from that little app. We're a wee bit over. I was hoping I could get this under an hour. So apologies, we've ran over a wee bit. Let's see. Let's go into 350. Oops. There we go. Yeah, the way they used to do this in old textbooks used to drive me nuts. You know, calling it the major seventh and the minor seventh and minor seventh and major seventh and so on, or the minor major seventh, which is our major minor seventh for dominant seventh chords. That's really not helpful at all. But it's still, there's a lot of textbooks that do that, guys. They describe the quality of the chord as well as the seventh. You do not need to call it that for the dominant seventh. You just call it the dominant seventh. You don't have to describe the triad as the major chord and then the seventh as a minor seventh, like, you know, major minor seventh. There's no book, none that I've come across anyway, that is going to do this sort of C capital. Whoops, my computer can't keep up. C capital M, small m, 7. Do you know what that's usually written as? It's usually just written as C7. Or in this case, because it's G, you would write it as G7. That's the normal way. Okay, so that to me just, doesn't help understand, whereas that is far more useful and applicable. Okay, so if you write like a letter with a number next to it like that, you're like G with a 7, you're saying it's a G major chord with a minor 7th on top. Okay, for this one, this is a D minor chord with a 7th. Yeah, you can write small m7 because what you're going to be doing is saying, okay, this is D small m7, D minor 7. This is a C major 7th chord, so you do need to write in, you can't write C7 because that's going to be suggesting a dominant 7th, so you need to write in C capital M7, or as some books write it as, C with a little triangle. So something like that. So with or without the 7 next to it. So yeah, that would be, if I just undo all of my writings and just do everything underneath. I'm going to do one for each one. So this would be C capital M7. This would be D small m7. So your minor 7th sound is in chord 2. Your minor 7th sound again, E minor 7th. So those two chords have the same quality. They start on different roots and different functions, but the same sound quality. Your major 7th chord, this is the same as chord 1. So this would be your F with a major 7th. So F capital M7. So you see the way for major 7ths, you need to write out capital M. For minor 7ths, you're talking about the triad that's minor. So major 7th is for the 7th, small m is for the chord, small m is for the chord, capital M is for the 7th. And for this one, you don't have to write an M at all. You're just writing G7. There we go. Back to minor 7th again. So this would be A minor 7th. So small m refers to the chord, remember? You can see why, but the minor 7th, you don't have to ever write small m7 for minor 7th. It's always implied that there's a minor 7th. Unless you have a major 7th, then you've got to put in capital. And it's the same for chords. You don't have to write in, this is a major chord. You just write G. And if it's a minor chord, then you have to put a small m next to it. So be careful of the rules. They're kind of how you treat minor chords and major chords, and minor 7ths or major 7ths are kind of like opposites of each other. So it's worth sort of, practicing that to make sure you're okay with seeing it, especially when you're buying like sheet music and like learning any sort of pop or blues or jazz music, and they've written the chords above the staves. You want to be able to understand what those symbols mean, without having to sort of go through and pick out every single note in the notation. And this is your B half diminished 7th chord. So the way that be useful to write that is exactly like with a wee small thing like that, but sometimes you see it written as B flat 5. Oops. B flat 5 with a 7th. It's not very useful, flat 5. That tends to be the way they talk about half diminished 7th chords, B flat 5 7. I usually find using that wee symbols a lot more useful. So if you see that, that means half diminished 7th now, that little circle with the line through it. But sometimes you will see flat 5 written in there, for B to F's a flat 5. Yeah, it's not very useful. This one's minor major. That's a weird one. That is a weird one, I give you that. You might have to write that out in full, C minor with a major 7th. Yeah, it's very rare that you use that chord, but the so-called Hitchcock chord. So yeah, that is just going to be written as that. There's no sort of short way we can really use that. Maybe we could do something like C minor with a wee triangle or something, so we don't have to write in major 7th. It's a bit weird. Then you're back to your half diminished 7th again. You augmented 7th chord, so a little plus sign. So this would be E flat with a plus 7. Your minor 7th again, your dominant 7th again, your major 7th again, and your fully diminished 7th chord. So this would just be B with a wee circle, or for some jazz books would actually just write it as B dim. diminished seventh. B, D, I, M. Sorry, it's a bit messy there, guys. And then 7. I think it's easier just to put the circle rather than write D, I, M. So that's all the sort of 7th chords, including the diminished, including the half diminished 7th chords that we're ever going to really need to go through. If you're a little bit unsure of this, as I'm sure most of you will be if you've never come across this before, it's not easy. Like, this is like grade 7 theory that you're hitting, and the stuff we were looking at last week, grade 8 sort of stuff. So when you're dealing with this whole family of chromatic chords, you're dealing with your Neapolitan chord, your augmented 6th chord, your secondary dominant, secondary leading note chords, your altered chords and borrowed chords, your diminished and half diminished 7th chords. There's a whole family of them there, and each one of them could be weeks of just, you know, private study and trying to find them in pieces of music that you already know yourself. And especially if you're learning any pieces where you can hear the sound, make sure that you draw attention to that in your learning, so you can really sort of assimilate the sound in your mind. Really, really useful, especially for sight reading and, playing music and jamming with other people as well as you get more familiar with this music. Okay. As usual, guys, if you have any questions on this or you need more materials or you want me to go through anything, please do get in contact. There's not much more we have to do for chromatic harmony. So the ball's now back to you guys. What do you want next? Okay, so I'm just going to throw that question out there. And you can email me, info@topscoremusicacademy.com. Actually, I'm just going to put that in to Thingamabob. If I just copy it, I got a wee thing on my stream deck that I can hit a button and a lot of wee things pop up. Oh, somebody said something. Sorry, guys, I missed something. Hold on. I'll listen to your knowledge and hear you play. Not that I understand it all. Maybe over time I will improve. Thank you for sharing, Kathleen. Yeah, Kathleen, no worries. Anything that you're not sure of and any topic that you want to go and say, I don't want to know all the other stuff. Just tell me about, dominant 7th chords. What does that mean? Yeah, we can do a thing on that. Or I just want to know more about chords themselves. How do you make a chord? Where do they come from? What's the difference between one chord and another? Yeah, anything at all, guys. This one that I've been doing over the last 4 or 5 weeks, guys, has been more because there's students coming up for exams. I have a couple of students who are doing grade 7. That's a lie. I have one who's doing grade 7 and a couple who are doing grade 8, and they all need to know this stuff. And I think they were asking, can you do like some videos on this just so we have like a permanent thing we can look at on YouTube? They really come to me for classes and they can record it as well in the Zoom, but they kind of want a sort of fresher of everything. So that's what this has been for the last, month or two. So it's back to you guys, though. If you prefer something a wee bit more, applicable to what you're learning and a bit more universal as regards theory, that's fine. Doesn't have to be theory, by the way, guys. I will be doing other things like, instrument recommendations and equipment and software and hardware and books that I recommend you get and, reviews of this, that, and the other. So it really literally means ask me anything, guys. It's not just theory. Okay, it has been just theory for the last 5 weeks, 6 weeks. But anything else, let me know. You can leave it in the comments on YouTube. You can send me a comment in any of my videos on YouTube. I do read them, and I do most of the time reply as fast as I can. And you can send an email directly to me, or you can leave something in the community on my website. There's a community there as well. So just get in contact and let me know what you would like to see. Okay. So we'll leave it there, and I'll see you guys again next week, and take it easy, and hope to hear from you soon. Okay. Take it easy, guys.